Welcome back. So I've kind of prepped the controller so we can use get by ID in the genre. Very simple stuff. We have the HTTP get where we go in and put in the ID just like we did earlier in other videos. And now we're going to try and pass that throughout the system. I also prepared get by ID and I send in the ID and I return an action result with the genre in there for the response type. So now all we need is kind of ask our service to figure out how we can read by ID. It's not here right now, so I'll just do a read by ID and I'll just start sending this throughout the system. I'll pass in the ID. I'll do Alt Enter or Option Enter, and I will actually go and create this inside our interface first, the genre service interface. There we go, and now we have that. I want to return a genre right here, the model object. Good, so now we have the service done, and that means that we're going to have to also update the actual genre service implementation, because now it can't call itself an iGenre service without that get by ID. So I'll implement the missing members, and now we have read by ID here as well. I'll return genre repository, and there's already a read by ID here because I made that in an earlier video. So let's just use that one. And that means that again, if I have to kind of go all the way down now to my implementation in the genre repository to make that read by ID. And this is where it gets exciting because now we need to start using the context in order to read ID from our database. And it's extremely simple again, so I'm going to show you it's almost the same as last time. So how do we actually do this? Well, let's just get started by calling the context right here, and we'll say genres again, that's what I want to do, and then let's just do the select. I'll just copy the select because I'll do the same thing anyway. So I'll select right here, but instead of doing two lists, all I want here is just one item right here. I don't want all of them, so I'll do first or default instead. Now the first or default is a way for us to say, I want to find the first that I kind of hit in the table. So I'll just try going through the list. As soon as I find one that's the one I'm looking for, I'll return. If I don't find anything, I'll return null, right? So that's what the first or default does for you. There's also like another one called first. What that will do is the same thing. It'll look for the first one in our rows in the tables, but if it kind of hits nothing, it'll actually throw an exception instead of returning null. So that's the difference. Let's just do the first or default for now, like this. And all I need to do now as the final thing is just explain what I'm looking for. And in my case, it's going to return a genre because we converted into genres right here. And I'm looking for the one with the genre ID of 1, like this. So I'll say ID equals that ID I'm passing in from the outside. There we go. So that's all we had to do in order to kind of get our genre back. Now we of course also need to return this, and now we've kind of taken looking for a specific genre entity, converting it into a genre, and looking by adding this to find the specific ID for that genre we're looking for. Let's try and see what happens now when we do a GET request. So we'll open up the application again, we'll jump into Swagger. And here we'll try and refresh the page. Now we have a get by ID. We'll try it out and let's just put 1, execute. It looks like we got the horror. Let's try and put 2, execute. Now we should get the comedy. There we go. Let's go back to the code and see what we're actually sending. We're making an SQL select name ID from genres as G, where GID equals the ID I'm passing in as a parameter right here, because these are stored procedures, so they're kind of SQL injection protected. And I'm limited to 1 because I'm calling first or default, so I only want 1. That's how easy it was to do the get by ID inside SQL. So next lesson, let's try and look at the post or the create. How do we do that in the SQL query? See you next time. Bye.